Welcome back to today's Explainer. If you've glanced at the news cycle for July 29, 2026, you're probably feeling a little overwhelmed, right? I mean, it is a truly chaotic day of headlines. But don't worry, we're going to structure all of this information using something I like to call the global impact funnel. Basically, we'll take this massive swirling news cycle and funnel it down. We're starting way up high with massive global crises, then moving into national political friction, regional disasters, some wild cultural scandals, and finally, we'll land on one incredibly touching local discovery. All right, let's dive right in.
So here's our roadmap for making sense of the day. We'll hit global crises and economic fears, fiery Capitol Hill hearings, extreme Northeast storm destruction, scandals in Hollywood and sports, tragedies, rescues, and lotteries, and wrap up with treasured gifts from the past.
Okay, starting right off with Section 1, Global Crises and Economic Fears, specifically looking at war, inflation, and a plunging market.
We're seeing a really severe economic domino effect today. And this matters deeply because, well, it directly impacts the money in our wallets. Here's how it played out. Step 1. The war with Iran is expanding. American bases in Jordan were fired upon, and an American-owned tanker in Egypt was hit by a drone, which actually brought Saudi Arabia into the fight in Iraq. Now, that geopolitical instability immediately triggers Step 2. Oil prices spiked by 8% in a single day. And of course, Step 3, that hits us directly at the pump, pushing the national gas average right up to $4.08. Finally, Step 4, all these inflationary pressures caused total panic on Wall Street. The Dow plunged 1,100 points. That's its worst loss since April of 2025.
And that brings us to this number, 66%. According to a new Quinnipiac poll, 66% of voters feel the war with Iran just isn't worth fighting. This massive number sets a huge stage for domestic political friction. Because, while President Trump is vowing to hit back very hard, the American public is showing some really serious skepticism and fatigue regarding this escalating overseas conflict. And that is absolutely going to shape the political environment moving forward.
So let's see how this builds into the broader picture. Because of skyrocketing oil driving inflation higher, Federal Reserve Chair Kevin Warsh held interest rates at 3.5% to 3.75% in a divided decision. As a result of these soaring prices, 60% of Americans now describe the economy as weak. Meanwhile, amidst this expanding war and all this economic anxiety, President Trump unveiled plans to revamp Washington's dullest airport. This is raising some eyebrows, with 68% of voters feeling he's distracted from the immediate problems facing most Americans. And on the international stage, well, Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu told ABC News he's highly skeptical of a diplomatic solution, citing Iran's history of playing for time. So yeah, the pressure is really coming from all sides here.
Moving on to Section 2. Fiery Capitol Hill hearings, Fauci and the Fifth Amendment.
This quote you're seeing? This was pretty much the refrain of the day. The 85-year-old former official, Dr. Anthony Fauci, invoked his Fifth Amendment rights over 100 times during a blistering interrogation by Republican Senator Rand Paul. The hearing got so heated that Senator Paul actually threatened to have security kick Fauci's lawyer out of the chamber. Dr. Fauci, who's testified over 200 times in his 54-year government career, just sat stone-faced. He later stated he believed the hearing was an unhinged obsession aimed purely at embarrassing him.
So what's actually at the core of this investigation? As an explainer, we're just looking at the facts reported from the hearing. On one side, you have the theory supported by most scientists that the virus likely jumped from an animal to humans. On the other side is the theory concluded by some U.S. intelligence agencies that the virus more likely leaked from a lab in Wuhan, China. Senator Paul pushed fiercely on whether there was a cover-up regarding these origins. Meanwhile, Democrats on the committee vehemently defended Dr. Fauci, stating he's being turned into a scapegoat in a much larger campaign against science. We aren't taking sides here. We just want to show you exactly what's driving this massive divide on Capitol Hill.
The crucial takeaway here is just how politically complex this whole thing has become. The hearing unearthed Dr. Fauci's personal diaries, which were actually handed over by Health Secretary Robert F. Kennedy Jr., where Fauci reflected on his exploding fame and interactions with celebrities like Julia Roberts and Barbra Streisand. It's also worth noting that Fauci holds a blanket preemptive pardon from President Biden. President Trump surprisingly commented on that today, calling it powerful. And in a completely separate political standoff on Capitol Hill today, President Trump's DOJ nominee, Todd Blanche, had his confirmation blocked by Republican Senator John Cornyn over disputes regarding a $1.8 billion taxpayer fund. Basically, Washington is gridlocked right now.
All right, stepping down the funnel to Section 3. Extreme Northeast storm destruction, a foot of rain and historic floods.
The sheer scale of the localized damage here is just staggering. We're talking about nearly a foot of rain falling just north of New York City.
First responders outside Albany literally had to wade through chest-deep floodwaters for rescues. Over in the Hudson Valley, a 300-year-old historic building was entirely demolished, just washed away by the floods. Down in Hackensack, New Jersey, downed power poles led to exploding transformers and completely incinerated cars. And in Haworth, get this, a massive tree crashed right through a man's dining room while he was eating breakfast. With saturated ground and rainfall rates of up to 2 inches an hour still expected, this threat is very much ongoing. It's a really stark reminder of how quickly extreme weather can just upend daily life.
That brings us to Section 4, Scandals in Hollywood and Sports. Leto and Romo in the spotlight.
First, over in Hollywood, a new BBC documentary titled Jared Leto, Hollywood's Dark Secret features interviews with multiple women claiming sexual misconduct and assault by the Oscar-winning actor. 4 of the women allege they were teenagers at the time of the encounters, while Leto was in his 30s and 40s. Now, it is absolutely crucial to note that Jared Leto has issued a strong statement categorically denying all of these claims. He stated he has never sexually assaulted anyone in his entire life and called the allegations absolutely false. Meanwhile, in the sports world, newly released police body camera footage shows the step-by-step arrest of former NFL star and broadcaster Tony Romo in Milwaukee. It started simply enough. Romo was pulled over for driving in a breakdown lane. When questioned, he calmly asked to call his lawyer, which he actually wasn't permitted to do at that exact moment. After officers allegedly found unopened booze in his backpack and an open bottle in the car, things escalated. He took and failed a field sobriety test. He then outright refused a breath test, stating his lawyers told him to never do that, which ultimately resulted in his arrest for operating under the influence.
Okay, moving on to Section 5, Tragedies, Rescues, and Lotteries, around the world and at home. We've got a real mix of high-anxiety incidents and remarkable resolutions here. Overseas, a tragic 6.8 magnitude earthquake in Japan has left 18 people dead, with gas explosions really hindering the rescue efforts in a shopping mall. Back in the States, terrifying dashcam video showed a flying tire smashing head-on into an SUV on a Philadelphia expressway. Out in Washington state, a wild road rage incident led to an arrest after a driver allegedly chased a couple for over a mile, driving entirely in reverse. Crazy, right? But on a more positive note, incredible high-tech footage from the FDNY robotics unit showed a drone dropping a flotation device to save a distressed swimmer off a New York City beach. And sadly, the music world is mourning today. Oscar-winning singer-songwriter Glenn Hansard tragically died in a motorcycle crash in his native Ireland at the age of 56. Okay, let's inject just a bit of lighthearted energy here. $800 million. That staggering number was won by a single Mega Millions ticket. Someone who walked into a Wawa in Bradenton, Florida, and bought a ticket matching all the numbers is waking up to an entirely different life today. Talk about a game changer. Finally, we slow the pace down for Section 6, Treasured Gifts from the Past, a 54-year journey.
Let's trace a really beautiful 54-year journey to wrap things up today. In 1972, a Lowell High School librarian named Kathleen Regan lost her red wallet. Decades went by, and sadly, in the early 2000s, Kathleen passed away. Fast forward to 2026. Construction workers knocking down a wall in that old school library stumble upon the wallet, and it's still holding Kathleen's treasured family photos. Recognizing the value of these analog memories in our highly digital age, the workers tracked down her family and returned this precious time capsule to them. It gave a family a piece of their loved one back, decades after she had gone.
And that brings us to our conclusion for today's explainer. When a single 24-hour cycle brings expanding global war, massive economic anxiety, intense domestic political standoffs, incredible drone rescues, and the heartwarming return of a lost artifact, how do we process the sheer volume of history happening all at once? It really reminds us that while the world is vast and chaotic, the human experience remains deeply connected. Thank you so much for joining me to unpack all of this. I can't wait to explore the next fascinating topic with you on our next explainer.